She laughed first, low, soft, the kind of laugh that felt like it had been hidden away for years, and then looked at me like I'd said something I wasn't supposed to. I don't even remember the joke anymore. All I remember is the way the room seemed to shift when her eyes met mine. The kind of shift you can't name, only feel, a weight in the air, a quiet pull, like gravity had chosen just the two of us. Her name was Claire, 45, elegant without trying. She had that unshakable kind of presence, the kind that made you stand up straighter without realizing you'd done it. And me? I was just some 20-something kid in a borrowed shirt, pretending I didn't notice how my hands shook when she reached for the wine bottle next to me. I did notice, though. God, I noticed everything. The way her sleeve slid up her arm when she poured, the faint trace of citrus in her perfume, the single strand of hair that wouldn't stay pinned back. I noticed, too, that she kept her distance, but only barely. Close enough that her warmth skimmed the edge of my sleeve, far enough that she could pretend it meant nothing. She didn't say much that night. Claire wasn't the type to fill silence just to make it less awkward. But when she did speak, low, deliberate, with the kind of voice that made every word feel like a secret, I found myself leaning in before I realized I'd moved. "Careful," she murmured when I brushed past her in the kitchen, my shoulder grazing hers. She didn't step away, though, not even a little. I don't think I breathed for a full 5 seconds. The thing about her was she never had to try. Younger women could walk into a room and demand attention, but Claire? She commanded it by existing. And maybe that's why I couldn't stop staring when I thought she wasn't looking. Or maybe it's why, when she caught me, and she always caught me, she didn't look away right away. The night blurred after that. Small talk, laughter, the quiet hum of music. But what I remember most is the way she lingered by the door when everyone else had gone. "Do you ever?" She stopped herself, pressing her lips together. "Ever what?" I asked, trying to sound casual even though my chest was pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. Her gaze held mine for a beat too long, and something in her expression softened, like she hated herself for what she was about to say, but couldn't stop. "If you were older," she said, almost a whisper, "I'd kiss you." It should have been a joke, something playful, but it wasn't. Her eyes didn't flinch, and my throat went dry. I don't know where the courage came from, but my voice didn't shake when I said it. "Do it anyway." For a second, I thought she'd laugh, or tell me I was being ridiculous. But she didn't. She just looked at me, and I saw it then. The wall she'd built, the years of telling herself she couldn't, shouldn't, and how. In that one moment, she wanted to tear it down. Her hand trembled when she reached for me, just enough to make me wonder if I was imagining it. The room was so quiet I swear I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. And then, a sharp knock at the front door. She froze, pulled her hand back like it had burned her. For a moment, neither of us moved. The weight of what almost happened hung heavy between us. "Don't," she whispered, barely audible. But her eyes said something else entirely. The knock faded, followed by muffled voices in the hallway. A neighbor dropping off a misdelivered package, nothing more. But by the time the door closed, the moment was gone. Claire didn't look at me as she set the box on the counter. Her hands were steady now, but her silence was too sharp, too deliberate. I told myself to leave, to thank her for the evening, make some awkward joke, and get out before I made things worse. But I didn't move. Not when she brushed past me to pick up 2 empty glasses. Not when her perfume, that quiet, citrus warmth, drifted too close again. "You should go," she said finally, her voice level. I swallowed. "Right? Yeah, I didn't." Something in her eyes flickered, not anger, but something softer, something like recognition. She sighed, rubbing her thumb against the base of her glass. "You don't understand," she murmured, almost to herself. "Then tell me," I said before I could stop myself. For a long time, she didn't answer. Then, "I'm too old for this." Her laugh was quiet, humorless. "For you." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that she didn't feel older when she was standing this close, when my chest tightened just from the way she brushed her hair behind her ear. But she didn't need my reassurance. She needed the space to keep her walls intact. Still, she didn't step back when I closed the distance between us. "Claire," I started, and she froze, like my voice alone had broken some unspoken rule. Her ex-husband had left years ago. I knew that much. The neighbors whispered about it when they thought she couldn't hear, speculating about his affair, about how she never dated after. She lived quietly, working from home, smiling politely at block parties, but never staying long. And maybe that's why I couldn't stay away. There was something in the way she carried herself, like she'd built an entire world where she didn't need anyone, but some small, hidden part of her still wanted to be seen. I saw it that night. "You think this is a joke?" she said suddenly, cutting through the quiet. "I don't," I said. Too quickly, maybe, but it was true. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue. But then she stopped, studying me instead. Like she was searching for something, an excuse to send me away or a reason to let me stay. When she reached past me to grab her phone from the counter, her hand brushed my arm. Just that, the barest touch of her fingers, but it was enough to make my breath catch. I knew I shouldn't stare, but I did. At the curve of her wrist, at the way her nails tapped lightly against the screen as she pretended to scroll through nothing. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly, not looking up. I didn't know how to answer. Maybe because I'd never met anyone who made silence feel this loud. Maybe because every time she looked at me, I felt like I'd been found out. "I don't know," I said finally, and it was the closest to honest I'd ever been. That made her look up, just for a second. She didn't smile, but something in her gaze softened, and in that tiny shift, I saw her guard slip. "You should really go," she said again, but this time there was no weight behind it. I didn't move. Neither did she. And then, so quietly I almost missed it, she said, "Stay." The word wasn't loud. It wasn't confident, but it stopped me cold, my heart hammering against my ribs. She didn't repeat it. She didn't need to. Because when she turned away, busying herself with nothing in particular, she didn't step aside. She let me stay in her orbit, close enough to feel the warmth radiating off her, close enough that when her hand brushed my shoulder as she reached for the wine again, neither of us pretended it was an accident. It started with the smallest things. The way she let me linger in her kitchen when I came by, never asking why I was there. The way her voice softened when she said my name, like it belonged to some secret version of her. The way my hand brushed hers one night when I passed her a glass, and neither of us moved fast enough to make it seem like an accident. But it was that Thursday evening that burned itself into me. She'd asked me to fix a loose shelf in her living room, nothing more than that. I told myself it was harmless, just helping out, but when I knocked, and she opened the door, hair damp from the shower and sweater slipping off one shoulder, harmless was the last word that came to mind. "You didn't have to rush," she said, stepping aside to let me in. I didn't, I lied. The shelf took 5 minutes, maybe less, but I stayed, because leaving felt impossible. She made tea, moving around the kitchen in quiet efficiency while I leaned against the doorway, pretending not to notice how the soft fabric of her sweater clung to her shoulder, how her bare feet patted across the tile, like she'd forgotten I was even there. "Thank you," she said when she slid a cup across the counter. I nodded, too aware of how close our hands came when I took it. And then, a vibration against the counter. Her phone. I didn't mean to look, but I caught the preview anyway. "Dinner tomorrow? Miss you. D." I froze, the handle of the mug warming in my palm, while she glanced at the screen and turned it face down without answering. "You should probably." I started, but the words caught when she looked at me. "It's nothing," she said, too quickly. "Just someone I used to know." Used to. The words stuck in my chest, heavy and sharp. Silence stretched between us, thick enough that I could hear my own heartbeat. She looked down, fingers tracing the rim of her mug. "You're quiet," she murmured, almost like she was afraid of the answer. I swallowed. "I just don't want to make this harder for you." Something in her expression faltered, and before I could second-guess myself, I stepped closer. Not close enough to touch. Not yet, but close enough that her breath brushed my collarbone when she exhaled. "This isn't," she started, but her voice broke, and she didn't finish. My hand twitched at my side, wanting to reach for her, to anchor her to the moment, but I stayed still. Because if I touched her now, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stop. And then, the sharp jingle of keys in the front door. She startled, stepping back just as her sister's voice rang out. "Claire? You home?" Claire's hand gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles white, as I forced my face into something neutral. Her sister appeared a moment later, carrying a bag of groceries and barely glancing in my direction. "Didn't know you had company," she said, breezy and oblivious. "Just fixing a shelf," Claire replied, her voice so steady it almost convinced me. Almost. I left quickly after that, her polite smile chasing me out the door like none of it had happened. But later, When my phone buzzed with her name, the message was short, almost nothing at all. I'm sorry. You didn't do anything wrong. I stared at it for a long time before typing back. Neither did you. The next time I saw her, 2 days later, it was as if the world had tilted slightly off its axis. She didn't speak when she let me in. She just stood there in the doorway, watching me like she'd been waiting for something she didn't have words for. And when I moved to pass her, brushing close enough that her shoulder grazed mine, she didn't pull away. Not this time. We stood there, inches apart, the air between us sharp with everything unsaid. My hand hovered at her waist. Not touching, not yet, and her breath caught, soft and uneven. Neither of us moved. Neither of us had to. Because in that quiet, with the world holding its breath, we both knew. Resisting wasn't going to save us anymore, that it was raining that night. The kind of steady, unrelenting rain that swallowed sound and left the world muted. She'd called me. Just a simple, "Are you busy?" But her voice carried something under the surface. Something frayed. When I got there, she didn't speak at first. Just opened the door, let me in, and closed it again like she'd been holding her breath. Her sweater was loose, sleeves too long, damp at the cuffs like she'd been standing near the open window. Her hair was a little wild, strands clinging to her cheek. "Bad day," she said finally, her voice flat, but her eyes were tired in a way that made my chest tighten. I didn't ask questions. I just followed her into the kitchen, where 2 glasses and a half-empty bottle of wine were already waiting. She poured without looking at me, her hand trembling just enough to catch my eye. "You don't have to." I started, but she cut me off. "Don't," she said, sharp enough to make me stop. Then softer, "Just don't." So I didn't. I sat across from her, close enough to hear the soft hitch in her breathing, close enough to see the way her fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. For a while, neither of us spoke. The rain filled the silence, tapping against the windows, a soft, restless drumbeat. And then, quietly, she said, "I don't know how to stop thinking about you." The words hit like a punch. I didn't move, didn't even breathe, afraid that any shift in the air would make her take it back. She laughed once, brittle and sharp, like she hated herself for saying it. "It's ridiculous. She broke off, shaking her head. "You're too young. And I should know better." I stood before I realized what I was doing, the chair scraping softly against the floor. "Claire," I said low. She didn't look up. "Look at me," I said, softer this time, and she did. Slowly. God, the way she looked at me, like she was terrified and desperate all at once, it broke something in me. I crossed the space between us, my hand brushing the hair gently from her face. Her breath caught when my knuckles grazed her cheek, but she didn't pull away. "You think I don't feel it too?" My voice was rough, low enough that it barely felt like mine. She closed her eyes, and when she spoke, it was almost a whisper. "This will ruin everything." "Then let it," I said. The silence that followed was electric. Heavy. She didn't move when I stepped closer, until the edge of the counter pressed against her hip and there was nowhere left for her to go. Her hand came up, hesitant, trembling, and curled in the front of my shirt, not pulling me closer, but not letting me step away either. I could feel her, the warmth of her body, the uneven rise and fall of her chest, the sharp hitch in her breath when my forehead brushed hers. "You don't know what you're asking for," she whispered, but her grip didn't loosen. "Then show me," I said. Her eyes opened, wide and unsteady, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just that. Her gaze, her breath, the fragile distance between our mouths. And then, the sudden, shrill ring of her phone shattered the moment. She flinched, her hand dropping, the spell broken. We froze, staring at the phone buzzing against the counter like it had every right to be there, like it hadn't just ripped something raw and unfinished out of the air. She didn't answer it, didn't even reach for it. But the space between us felt different now. Charged, dangerous, impossible to ignore. When her eyes met mine again, there was no wall left, no polite distance, no practiced restraint. Only the quiet, undeniable truth that whatever this was, we'd just crossed a line we couldn't uncross. The storm had passed by the next morning, but the quiet between us hadn't. I told myself I wouldn't come over, that I'd give her space, let her decide what she wanted. But by evening, I was standing at her door again, staring at the brass number on the frame like it held some kind of answer. She opened it before I knocked. You shouldn't be here, she said. No hello, no hesitation, just that. And yet, she didn't close the door. I stepped inside anyway, the air sharp with that same citrus and rain scent that clung to her. She turned away, arms crossed tight, like bracing herself. You don't understand, she said, her voice unsteady. Then make me understand, I said, sharper than I meant to. She spun around, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Not the kind that runs, the kind that knows there's nowhere left to hide. My sister knows, she said finally. She came by this morning. She saw. She hesitated, jaw tight. She saw the way you looked at me. My stomach dropped. She didn't say anything. Claire continued, softer now, but she didn't have to. I know what she's thinking, and if she knows, others will too. I took a step closer, but she retreated, her back brushing the edge of the counter. So what? I said. Her laugh was hollow. So what? I'm the woman who couldn't keep her marriage together, who spent years keeping her life small just to keep it safe. And now, her voice broke, and she looked away. Now I'm standing here, letting me what? I closed the distance between us. Her breath hitched when I was close enough that my hand almost grazed her hip. Letting you make me feel like I'm 20 again, she whispered. Silence swallowed the words. My chest tightened, every instinct screaming to close that last inch between us, to pull her in and make her believe she didn't need to be afraid. Instead, I reached for her hand, slow, careful, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. You think I don't know what this is doing to me? She said, her voice trembling now. You think I don't see the way She cut herself off, eyes glistening as if she'd said too much. Then don't fight it, I murmured. Her hand tightened in mine, a quiet tremor running through her fingers. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. And then the sound, a vibration from the counter, her phone again, flashing a name I didn't recognize. She jerked her hand away like she'd been burned, stumbling a half-step back. I can't, she said, shaking her head. Not like this. Not if it's going to hurt someone. The words sliced clean through me, but what stopped me cold was the way she was shaking. Barely, but enough that I could see it in the line of her shoulders. Claire, please, she said, voice breaking. Don't make me choose right now. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there, watching her stare at that phone like it was a lifeline she didn't want but couldn't let go of. Then, without looking up, she said, stay. The word was softer this time, barely there. But it rooted me in place, heavy and certain. She didn't turn to face me. Just moved past, brushing against me in the narrow kitchen, her shoulder grazing mine. A deliberate, quiet acknowledgement that whatever this was, we'd already stepped too far to turn back. The room felt different now, smaller, tighter, charged with something that was no longer just want but something sharper. And as she reached for a glass with unsteady hands, I realized something I hadn't before. This wasn't just about desire anymore. It was about need. And one way or another, neither of us was going to leave this untouched. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the fridge and the low patter of rain still dripping from the eaves outside. She stood at the counter, her back to me, shoulders tense, one hand braced against the edge like she needed it to stay upright. I didn't move at first. I just watched her, the curve of her neck, the way her hair fell loose and unkempt over her shoulder, the soft rise and fall of her breathing. Claire, I said finally, my voice low. She didn't turn, didn't even flinch. You should go, she said, but the words were hollow. I'm not leaving, I murmured. Slowly, she turned, her eyes finding mine. Whatever fight she'd been holding onto was gone, replaced by something raw, unguarded. This will ruin me, she whispered. Then let it ruin me, too, I said. Something in her cracked at that. I saw it in the way her shoulders dropped, in the way her breath came quicker, uneven. I crossed the room slowly, giving her every chance to stop me. She didn't. When I was close enough to feel the heat radiating off her, I lifted a hand, brushing my thumb along the line of her jaw. Her eyes fluttered shut, just for a moment, and then opened again, sharp and searching. You don't know what this means, she said, voice trembling but steadying with each word. For you. For me. For everyone else. I swallowed hard. I don't care about everyone else. My voice faltered, because what I wanted to say, what I felt, was too big, too heavy to fit into words. She stepped closer, erasing the last bit of space between us until I could feel her, the warmth of her body, the whisper of her breath against my throat. "You'll hate me for this," she said, softer now, like a confession meant only for the two of us. I shook my head. No, never. And then there was no more distance, no more hesitation. Her hand came up to my chest, trembling as it rested over my heartbeat, and my forehead leaned against hers like gravity had pulled us there. The world narrowed, to the sharp inhale of her breath, the warmth of her skin beneath my palm, the way her voice broke when she whispered my name. For a moment, neither of us moved. The tension was unbearable, every second stretched thin, tight, ready to snap. Then she tilted her head, just enough, and everything shifted. It wasn't a perfect kiss. It wasn't careful or practiced. It was messy, urgent, full of everything we'd been holding back for weeks. The fear, the longing, the quiet ache that had been eating us alive. When she finally pulled back, her forehead still pressed to mine, her breath ragged, she whispered, "What are we doing?" I didn't have an answer. Maybe there wasn't one. But when her fingers curled into my shirt like she was afraid I'd disappear, I knew this much. Whatever we'd started, neither of us wanted to stop. "I don't know," I said, voice rough, "but I'm not walking away." Her eyes closed, a single tear slipping free, but she smiled, small, fragile, like it hurt. "Then don't," she said. The air around us shifted, lighter somehow, even as the weight of what we'd done settled in. There was no pretending now, no denying the truth we'd both been too afraid to face. She leaned into me then, quiet and certain, her head against my chest, her breathing slowly evening out. And I held her there, my arms wrapped around her like maybe that would be enough to keep the world at bay. For the first time, there was no fear, no second-guessing, just the quiet, undeniable clarity that whatever this was, messy, complicated, impossible, it was real. And we both finally understood. We weren't letting go. The morning light was soft, spilling through her kitchen window in pale streaks that made the room feel almost unreal. She was sitting at the table, hair pulled into a loose knot, sleeves rolled up, hands cradling a mug of coffee. She didn't look up right away when I walked in, but the corner of her mouth curved, a quiet acknowledgement that I was still there, that I hadn't left in the night. I leaned against the doorway, watching her for a moment. The tension that had lived in her shoulders for weeks was softer now, replaced by something calmer, steadier. "You're staring," she murmured, her voice still rough from sleep. "Yeah," I said, not even bothering to deny it. She finally looked at me, eyes warm but cautious, like she was still waiting for me to realize what this was, what it meant. "Are you okay?" she asked, hesitant, like the question itself was dangerous. I crossed the room, sliding into the chair opposite hers. "Better than okay," I said, and when she didn't look away, I added, softer, "Are you?" Her fingers tightened around the mug, a flicker of something, fear, maybe, crossing her face. But then she nodded. "I'm trying to be," she said. "It's strange, waking up and not feeling like I have to pretend anymore." I reached across the table, slow enough to give her the chance to pull away. She didn't. Her hand slipped into mine like it had always belonged there, warm and tentative and perfect. "I don't want to hide it," I said quietly. She blinked at me, surprise flashing in her eyes. "People will talk," she warned, but her voice lacked the sharpness it once had. "Let them," I said. "Let them talk. They don't get to decide this." Something in her eased then, not all the way, but enough. Enough that she didn't pull her hand back. Enough that she let herself smile, small and real. We sat there like that for a while, not speaking, just being. The quiet between us wasn't heavy anymore. It felt like something shared, something safe. When I finally stood, moving to the counter to pour my own coffee, she followed me. Not with words, but with the soft weight of her presence at my back. And when I turned, her hand brushed my arm, lingering just long enough to feel deliberate. "You scare me," she admitted, barely above a whisper. I set my cup down and closed the distance between us, my hands resting lightly on her hips. "Why?" "Because I want this," she said. "More than I should. More than makes sense." I tipped my forehead to hers, breathing her in, steady and certain. "Then stop trying to make sense of it," I said. She let out a shaky laugh, quiet and almost disbelieving. And then, finally, she leaned into me, not tentative this time, not afraid. Just there, fully, like she'd made her choice. We didn't need more words after that. Not then. Later, we sat on the couch, her head resting against my shoulder, my arm around her, our fingers laced together. The television hummed quietly in the background, but neither of us was paying attention. It was enough, just being there, breathing in sync, letting the weight of everything settle into something that finally felt right. Every doubt, every whispered "what if," every quiet fear about what the world would say, none of it mattered in that moment. Because for the first time, we weren't running from it. And as the sun dipped low outside her window, painting the room in gold, she turned her face toward me, eyes soft and steady, and whispered, "Stay." I didn't even hesitate. Always. And that was it. No more questions, no more lines we couldn't cross. Just her, and me, and the quiet certainty that whatever came next, we'd face it together. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?